Imagine holding in your hands a fragile clay tablet, carved over 5,000 years ago, long before the pyramids rose and centuries before the Bible was written. Its wedge-shaped symbols whisper of kings who reigned for thousands of years, of gods who came down from the heavens, and of secrets about the birth of humanity itself. These are not just myths scratched into stone. They are messages left by the world's very first civilization, the Sumerians. But what if these ancient records don't just describe history? What if they rewrite it? What if the story of human origins we've been taught is only a fragment, and the real truth has been hiding in the dust of Mesopotamia all along? The Sumerian tablets are not silent artifacts. They are a voice from the deep past, daring us to question everything we know about who we are. The Sumerians are often called the cradle of civilization, yet their story is far more mysterious than most history books reveal. In the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, they built the first great cities, developed writing, established laws, and mapped the stars. But among their greatest legacies are thousands of clay tablets, carefully inscribed with symbols that survived millennia. At first glance, these tablets appear to be simple records, trade agreements, king lists, or prayers to their gods. Yet, as archaeologists and linguists worked to decode them, an unsettling picture began to emerge. They contained tales of beings who came from the skies, knowledge of planets invisible to the naked eye, and a vision of humanity's origin that challenges our modern understanding. This is not just the story of one ancient people. It is a puzzle that touches every culture, every religion, and every question we've ever asked about where we come from. The Sumerian tablets do not just preserve history, they may redefine it. The dawn of civilization. Long before Rome, Egypt, or Greece carved their names into history, another people rose from the fertile plains of Mesopotamia. The Sumerians appeared suddenly around 4000 BCE, in a world still dominated by scattered tribes and simple farming villages. Yet, in a matter of centuries, they achieved what no one before them had even imagined: the foundations of civilization itself. They built cities unlike anything the world had ever seen. Uruk, one of their greatest, stretched across vast walls and housed tens of thousands of people. Towering temples known as ziggurats rose high above the plains, their steps reaching toward the heavens as if inviting the gods to descend. In these bustling cities, markets thrived, artisans created fine crafts, and priests recorded rituals meant to keep cosmic order intact. But the Sumerians were not only builders, they were innovators. They invented the world's first known writing system, cuneiform, pressing wedge-shaped marks into soft clay that hardened into permanent records. These symbols preserved contracts, hymns, myths, and even school lessons, ensuring their thoughts would outlive them. With writing came history, the ability to pass knowledge across generations without relying on memory alone. They also gave the world mathematics, dividing time into minutes and seconds, and charting the heavens with remarkable precision. Their observations of the stars would influence Babylonian, Greek, and even modern astronomy. And their laws, written centuries before Hammurabi's famous code, reveal an early attempt to bring order and justice into human society. To call the Sumerians advanced is an understatement. Their sudden rise and the scale of their achievements baffle historians to this day. How did a people in such an early age acquire knowledge so vast, so precise, and so enduring? Was it pure human genius? Or did the inspiration for their civilization come from something, or someone, else? This question becomes even more pressing when we turn to the tablets they left behind. For within those small pieces of clay lies not only the record of their kings and their cities, but also stories that seem far too extraordinary to dismiss. The Sumerian tablets. When archaeologists first uncovered the ruins of Sumerian cities in the mid-19th century, they expected pottery, tools, and broken walls. What they did not expect was the overwhelming number of clay tablets buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia. Over 500,000 tablets have been discovered so far, scattered across ancient libraries and temple archives. Each one is a voice frozen in time, pressed into clay by hands that lived 5,000 years ago. These tablets were written in cuneiform, the world's first written language. To the untrained eye, the markings look like nothing more than tiny wedges pressed into mud. But when scholars slowly learned to read them, an entire lost world came alive. There were receipts for grain, contracts between merchants, and records of laws, proof of a society far more organized than anyone had imagined. Yet, alongside the practical writings were texts that carried far greater weight. The Sumerians recorded myths of their gods, epic tales of heroes, hymns to celestial beings, and lists of kings whose reigns stretched for thousands of years. The Sumerian king list, for example, describes rulers before the Great Flood who supposedly lived for tens of thousands of years, details that challenge our modern sense of time and history. Among the most astonishing discoveries were creation myths that bear uncanny similarities to later biblical accounts. The story of a great flood sent by the gods, a man chosen to build a massive boat, and the survival of life through divine warning, all appear first in Sumerian writings, long before the story of Noah. These parallels raise a troubling question. Did later civilizations inherit their sacred stories from the Sumerians? The tablets also contain references to celestial knowledge. Some describe the movements of planets, including Uranus and Neptune, worlds invisible to the naked eye, only discovered by modern science thousands of years later. How did the Sumerians possess such knowledge? Was it mere coincidence or evidence of a deeper understanding of the cosmos? Perhaps the most mysterious of all are the stories of the Anunnaki, powerful beings said to have descended from the heavens to shape humanity's destiny. To some scholars, these are symbolic myths meant to explain natural forces. To others, they are startling records of encounters with something far beyond the ordinary human experience. What makes the Sumerian tablets extraordinary is not just their content, but their consistency. Across thousands of tablets and different cities, the same themes reappear: gods from the skies, advanced knowledge, and a vision of human origins that defies the simple idea of gradual progress. The Sumerians never claimed these stories were fantasies. To them, the tablets were truth, carved in clay for future generations. And as we continue to unearth more of these records, one thing becomes clear. The Sumerians wanted their knowledge to last forever, perhaps because they believed it would one day be rediscovered by us. Secrets hidden in the tablets for centuries. The Sumerian tablets lay buried in silence, their wedge-shaped symbols unreadable. But as scholars began to decode them, it became clear that these writings were not only about trade or rituals. Hidden among the lines were stories so extraordinary that they seemed to blur the line between myth and history. Of the most compelling mysteries is the tale of the Anunnaki, a group of powerful beings described as descending from the heavens. The Sumerians believed these entities played a direct role in shaping human life, granting knowledge and order to early civilization. Unlike distant gods, the Anunnaki were portrayed as walking among men, ruling, teaching, and sometimes even punishing. Their presence raised the unsettling question: were these simply divine myths, or memories of encounters with beings beyond our world? Equally puzzling is the Sumerian king list, a record carved into clay that names rulers stretching back tens of thousands of years. Before a great flood, it claims, kings reigned for impossibly long spans of time. After the flood, their reigns became shorter, aligning more closely with human lifespans. Scholars debate whether this was symbolic, mythological, or perhaps a distorted memory of something real. If even part of it holds truth, it challenges the very framework of human history. The tablets also reveal an astonishing depth of astronomical knowledge. Some describe planetary alignments and celestial bodies in ways that seem far too advanced for a Bronze Age people. They even appear to reference planets like Uranus and Neptune, which are invisible to the naked eye and unknown until modern telescopes. How could the Sumerians know of their existence unless the knowledge came from an unexpected source? Beyond the stars, the tablets hold clues to medicine, agriculture, and architecture far ahead of their time. Records describe medical treatments with surprising accuracy, rituals of irrigation that sustained vast cities, and mathematical calculations that laid the foundations for geometry and astronomy. These were not the random myths of a primitive culture. They were organized, advanced, and deliberate. What unsettles historians most is the consistency. Across thousands of tablets from different cities, the same themes repeat: a flood that reshaped humanity, gods that descended to guide mankind, rulers who lived for ages, and cosmic knowledge far beyond their era. These were not isolated legends. They were the shared memory of an entire civilization. To dismiss these tablets as simple mythology is tempting, but difficult. The precision of their details, their echoes in later cultures, and the unanswered mysteries woven into their lines keep the debate alive. Were the Sumerians recording symbolic truths, or history we are not yet ready to accept? The answers may lie not only in what the tablets say, but in what they imply. Because if the Sumerians were right, then humanity's story is far older, far stranger, and far more connected to the heavens than we have ever been told. How they challenge human history. The key, discoveries hidden within the Sumerian tablets, strike at the very foundation of what we think we know about human history. For centuries, the accepted story has been simple. Humanity rose slowly, step by step, from primitive tribes to advanced civilizations. Knowledge accumulated gradually, and myths were invented to explain what early people could not understand. But the Sumerian records disrupt this neat progression. Take the king list. If the rulers before the flood truly reigned for thousands of years, then human history stretches back into a timeline that defies logic. Mainstream scholars insist these numbers must be symbolic, exaggerations to glorify the past. Yet why would the Sumerians, so precise in trade records, legal codes, and astronomy, suddenly abandon accuracy when recording their rulers? Then there is the knowledge of the heavens. The references to planets invisible to the naked eye cannot be easily explained. Modern science only confirmed Uranus and Neptune with telescopes in the last few centuries. For the Sumerians to mention them suggests one of two possibilities: either a staggering coincidence or knowledge passed down from a source we do not yet understand. The parallels with later religious texts also unsettle historians. The Great Flood, the chosen survivor, the divine being shaping humanity's destiny. These appear in the Sumerian tablets long before the Bible, Torah, or Quran. Does this mean that later religions borrowed from Sumer? Or does it point to a common root story, echoing through time from a single ancient source? Even the Anunnaki legends challenge our sense of human origins. Were they merely symbolic figures meant to represent natural forces? Or were they remembered as real beings who interacted with mankind? Some researchers argue that these accounts describe advanced visitors who imparted knowledge, while others dismiss them as allegory. The truth remains unresolved, yet the very presence of such consistent stories forces us to question whether our past is more complex than textbooks suggest. In the end, the tablets raise more questions than they answer, but perhaps that is their true power. They push us to confront the possibility that the story of humanity is not as straightforward as we believe. The Sumerians dared to preserve a version of history that challenges modern certainty, and by doing so, they left us with a haunting possibility that we are only scratching the surface of our true origins. Global legacy of the Sumerians. Although the Sumerian civilization eventually faded, their influence did not vanish. Instead, it flowed into the cultures that followed, shaping the very foundations of human progress. The Babylonians and Assyrians inherited their writing, preserving and expanding the cuneiform script for centuries. Through them, Sumerian myths, laws, and knowledge continued to echo long after the original cities had crumbled. The Sumerian approach to law, written, organized, and preserved, set the stage for future legal systems. Their mathematics, based on the sexagesimal, base 60 system, is why we still divide an hour into 60 minutes and a circle into 360 degrees. Their methods of irrigation and agriculture allowed Mesopotamia to feed massive urban populations, a model copied by later empires. Even in astronomy, their legacy endured. The Babylonians refined Sumerian observations of the stars, which in turn influenced the Greeks, whose ideas became the backbone of Western science. Without Sumerian contributions, our understanding of time, space, and the order of the cosmos might look very different today. Perhaps most fascinating is how their myths traveled. Elements of Sumerian creation stories and flood narratives resurfaced in Babylonian epics, Hebrew scriptures, and beyond. In this way, the tablets of a forgotten people helped shape the spiritual imagination of half the world. Though the names of their kings may have faded, the fingerprints of the Sumerians remain on every clock we use, every map we draw, and every law we follow. They were not just the first civilization. They became the blueprint for all who came after. Conclusion: the Sumerian tablets are more than fragments of clay. They are windows into a civilization that seemed to appear from nowhere, a people whose knowledge still puzzles the modern mind. Through their writings, we see the first glimpses of law, science, religion, and myth. Yet we also encounter mysteries that refuse to fit neatly into our accepted history. Kings who reigned for impossible lengths of time, gods who descended from the skies, and celestial knowledge that should have been far beyond their reach. What makes these records so powerful is not just what they reveal, but what they challenge. They force us to ask whether humanity's origins are more complex than we are taught, whether the stories of creation and the flood that echo across cultures began here, and whether the Sumerians themselves were keepers of knowledge given to them by forces long forgotten. Today, as archaeologists continue to uncover and translate new tablets, each discovery is a reminder that history is not fixed. It is alive, waiting to be rewritten. The Sumerians wanted their words to endure, and they succeeded. Thousands of years later, their voices still speak to us, daring us to question, to search, and to wonder. Perhaps that is their greatest legacy, not simply building the world's first civilization, but leaving behind a message for the future, a message that whispers from the dust of Mesopotamia. Humanity's story is far older, far stranger, and far more extraordinary than we have ever imagined.